Welcome to Courtroom Conversations on the Classic Courtroom YouTube channel. I'm Dylan Brooks Hamilton. And if you're enjoying these deep dives into fascinating legal cases, well, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on future episodes.
I'm Susan Kelly Ashford, and today we're diving into the murky depths surrounding the Titanic. Not the disaster itself, but the legal battle brewing over salvaging its artifacts, and why those expeditions are on hold.
It's amazing how this shipwreck from over a century ago in 1912 still captures our imaginations, yet now it's a legal battleground. You'd think after all this time the case would be settled.
You'd think so, but it's far more complicated. RMS Titanic Inc., or RMST, has held the salvage rights since 1994, recovering and exhibiting artifacts, but now the U.S. government is pushing back. They argue that the wreck is a memorial site, and disturbing it violates a 2017 federal law, not to mention an agreement with Great Britain.
So it's a clash between those who believe these artifacts have scientific and historical value versus those who see the site as a sacred resting place. What exactly prompted this recent legal challenge?
RMST's initial plan was to actually enter the hull of the Titanic, potentially retrieving objects from within. This sparked immediate concern from the U.S. government, who argued that such an intrusion would be disrespectful and could cause further damage to the already deteriorating wreck.
We can't forget the context of the Titan submersible tragedy in 2023. Didn't that shift the entire conversation surrounding these expeditions?
Absolutely. The Titan, operated by a separate company, imploded while taking tourists and experts down to view the Titanic. Tragically, one of the victims was Paul-Henri Nargeolet, RMST's own director of underwater research and the planned leader for their expedition. This event served as a stark reminder of the inherent risks involved in deep-sea exploration, especially considering the Titanic lies nearly 2.5 miles beneath the surface.
It almost feels like a warning, doesn't it? Like the Titanic itself is saying, leave me undisturbed. Did RMST completely back down after this tragedy?
They adjusted their plans, shifting from entering the hull to only capturing external images. This appeased the U.S. government enough to allow that expedition to proceed, resulting in some remarkably detailed images of the Titanic in September 2023.
But that doesn't mean the government is letting their guard down, right?
Not at all. They made it very clear that this was a temporary reprieve, and they'd intervene again if RMST attempted any further artifact retrieval. This brings us to where things stand now, a stalemate with RMST stating they won't visit the wreck in 2025 and have no concrete plans for future expeditions. The U.S. government, for now, has withdrawn its legal challenge.
Okay, so a temporary pause. But the clock is ticking. Experts have said the Titanic is deteriorating rapidly. How long do we have before the wreck is beyond salvaging, even if legal hurdles are cleared?
That's a difficult question. Time is definitely not on our side. The ship is under constant assault. Iron-eating bacteria, salt corrosion, and deep-sea currents are all contributing to its slow but inevitable demise.
Which makes the whole salvage debate even more urgent. If we wait too long, there might not be much left to argue about. But this isn't RMST's first legal battle over Titanic artifacts, is it? Didn't they try to retrieve the ship's radio back in 2020?
They did. RMST wanted to recover the Marconi wireless telegraph that broadcasted the Titanic's distress calls, an artifact many consider to be the crown jewel of the wreckage. Initially, U.S. District Judge Rebecca Beach-Smith, who oversees Titanic's salvage matters, granted them permission. Exactly. The government argued that removing such a crucial piece of the wreck, especially one so closely tied to the tragedy, would be disrespectful and potentially damaging to the overall historical integrity of the site. They believe it should remain where it was, a silent testament to the events of that night.
So what happened? Did RMST ultimately get the radio?
No, the legal battle never reached a conclusion. The COVID-19 pandemic hit, causing RMST to indefinitely delay the expedition. But this attempt to retrieve the radio highlights a key tension in this whole debate, that desire to study and exhibit these artifacts versus respecting the Titanic as a gravesite.
It's like a tug of war between those who see the Titanic as a historical treasure trove and those who see it as a hallowed ground. Let's break down both sides of the argument. What are the strongest points for those who believe in retrieving more artifacts?
Proponents of salvage operations argue that these objects hold immense historical and scientific value. By studying them, we can gain a deeper understanding of the ship's construction, the lives of its passengers and crew, and the events leading up to the sinking. Think about it. Each recovered object has a story to tell, a piece of the puzzle that contributes to a more complete picture of what happened on that fateful night.
It's like holding a piece of history in your hands.
Yeah.
I can see why that would be compelling.
Exactly. And proponents also argue that displaying these artifacts in museums allows the public to connect with history on a more visceral level. sparking curiosity and fostering a greater appreciation for the Titanic story. It's one thing to read about the Titanic in a textbook, but it's another to stand before an actual artifact from the ship and imagine the hands that touched it, the stories it could tell.
Those in favor of retrieving artifacts also emphasize the rapid deterioration of the wreck, right?
That's a key point. They argue that if we don't recover these artifacts now, they could be lost forever, consumed by the ocean's relentless forces. It's like a race against time to preserve these tangible links to the past before they disappear completely.
Okay, so there's a sense of urgency driving their argument. But what about the opposing side? Why are some people so adamantly against any further salvage attempts?
For many, the Titanic represents more than just a shipwreck. It's a gravesite, a sacred resting place for the over 1,500 people who perished that night. They argue that disturbing the wreck, even for scientific purposes, is disrespectful to the memory of the victims and their families. Imagine it as a giant underwater cemetery. Wouldn't intruding on that space, regardless of the intent, feel inherently wrong?
It's like trespassing on hallowed ground, disturbing the peace of those who rest there.
That's a powerful analogy. Opponents also believe that removing artifacts diminishes the historical integrity of the site itself. The Titanic, as it rests on the ocean floor, serves as a time capsule, a snapshot of that tragic night frozen in time. By taking pieces away, are we altering the historical narrative? Are we sanitizing the site? These are questions they grapple with.
And I imagine concerns about commercial exploitation play a role as well, particularly with a for-profit company like RMST involved.
Absolutely. There's a worry that allowing companies to salvage artifacts opens the door to unchecked exploitation, where profit takes precedence over historical preservation and respect for the site.
So how do we navigate this complex web of conflicting interests? Is there any middle ground?
It's a tough question, and the answer isn't straightforward. Some argue that establishing a UNESCO World Heritage Site status for the Titanic could provide a framework for managing the wreck and its artifacts, ensuring greater international protection and oversight.
That seems like a sensible approach. A unified set of regulations could help alleviate some of these concerns.
Others suggest imposing stricter regulations on any salvage operations requiring permits, archaeological oversight, and a clear emphasis on scientific research rather than commercial gain. This would ensure greater accountability and transparency, ensuring that any artifacts retrieved are handled with the utmost care and respect.
So more regulation, more oversight, a greater emphasis on scientific value over monetary value. But even with these measures, the ethical dilemma remains. Is it ever truly ethical to disturb a site where so many people lost their lives?
That's the crux of the issue, and there's no easy answer. It boils down to balancing respect for the dead with the potential knowledge we could gain.
But is there another option? Could we leave the Titanic entirely undisturbed, letting it remain as a solemn memorial?
That's certainly a possibility and a powerful statement in its own right. Letting the Titanic rest in peace, allowing it to slowly become part of the ocean floor, acknowledges the tragedy and the profound loss of life.
However, it also means losing the opportunity to learn from the wreck, to uncover new insights into the ship's construction, the lives of its passengers, and the events that unfolded that night.
It's a difficult decision, and one that highlights the complex relationship we have with our past. Do we have a right to disturb history in the pursuit of knowledge? Or is it our responsibility to preserve the past, even if it means leaving some secrets buried?
It seems we're left with more questions than answers. But one thing is clear: the future of the Titanic and the fate of its artifacts will depend on the choices we make today. How do we balance preservation with exploration, respect for the dead, with a thirst for knowledge?
These are questions that deserve careful consideration, thoughtful debate, and perhaps most importantly, a global conversation. After all, the Titanic's story transcends national borders, touching upon themes of human ambition, technological advancements, and the fragility of life itself.
And that's where our audience comes in. We want to hear from you. What do you think should happen to the Titanic and its artifacts?
Share your thoughts in the comments below. We'll be back with part 3, where we'll delve into the potential future of the Titanic, exploring the possibilities and challenges that lie ahead.
So we've really explored these legal battles surrounding the Titanic, the ethical considerations of disturbing a gravesite, and the passionate arguments for and against salvaging its artifacts. But what about the Titanic's future? What happens as this iconic wreck continues to deteriorate on the seabed?
Well, time is the one thing we can't control. And in the Titanic's case, time is not on its side. The ship is slowly being consumed by the ocean, iron-eating bacteria, salt corrosion, and the relentless forces of those deep-sea currents are all taking their toll.
Yeah, it's a gradual but inevitable process. How long do experts believe the Titanic can withstand these forces before it's essentially gone?
Well, some predict that within a few decades, the Titanic could be little more than a pile of rust and debris, its structural integrity completely compromised. Imagine it, the grand staircase, the promenade deck, the iconic bow, all reduced to scattered remnants on the ocean floor.
It's almost like a slow-motion vanishing act, a piece of history fading before our eyes. This adds another layer of complexity to the salvage debate, doesn't it?
Yeah.
If we wait too long, there might not be anything left to salvage, even if all the legal and ethical hurdles are cleared.
Precisely. The deterioration of the Titanic raises the stakes for everyone involved. It forces us to confront a difficult question. Do we prioritize preserving what's left of the physical wreck? Or do we attempt to recover as much as possible before it's too late, even if it means disturbing a site many consider sacred?
So what are the possible scenarios that could unfold in the coming years? Could this stalemate between RMST and the U.S. government continue indefinitely?
Well, that's certainly a possibility. RMST, deterred by legal challenges and the tragic loss of their expedition leader, might choose to hold off on further salvage attempts. The U.S. government, along with other nations, could maintain their stance against any attempts to disturb the wreck, arguing that the Titanic should be left undisturbed as a memorial.
In that scenario, the Titanic would essentially be left to its fate, slowly succumbing to the forces of nature. It would become an increasingly inaccessible underwater memorial, a silent testament to the tragedy and the lives lost.
Yeah, and another possibility is that advancements in technology could dramatically change the game. Imagine autonomous underwater vehicles equipped with high-resolution cameras and advanced sensors capable of mapping the wreck in unprecedented detail without any physical intervention.
So we could essentially create a virtual Titanic, allowing us to explore every nook and cranny of the ship without physically disturbing it.
Exactly. And perhaps one day, with advancements in 3D imaging and virtual reality, we could even create a completely immersive, interactive experience of the Titanic. People could walk its decks, explore its cabins, and even witness its final moments, all from the safety of dry land.
It's like bringing the Titanic back to life not as a physical object, but as a digital memory preserved for all time. It's a fascinating concept, but even in this digital future, the ethical questions would remain, wouldn't they?
Right.
Absolutely.
Right.
Who owns the rights to the Titanic's digital image? How do we ensure that its story is told accurately and respectfully? These are important questions that would need to be addressed.
And regardless of which path we choose, preservation, limited salvage, or digital recreation, the ultimate goal should be to honor the memory of those who perished, and to ensure that the Titanic story continues to be told in a way that respects the past, informs the present, and inspires the future.
Couldn't have said it better myself. The Titanic, even in its watery grave, continues to challenge us, provoke our curiosity, and remind us of the enduring power of human stories, even those shrouded in tragedy.
And it's a story that continues to unfold both in the legal battles being waged and in the scientific discoveries being made. And as the Titanic slowly fades into the ocean depths, the responsibility for its legacy rests with us.
We must learn from the past, consider the ethical implications of our actions, and work together to ensure that the Titanic story is told in a way that is both informative and respectful.
Well, thank you for joining us on this journey to the depth of the Atlantic and to the heart of a timeless story. We hope this deep dive has provided you with a better understanding of the complexities surrounding the Titanic's legacy.
And as always, we encourage you to continue the conversation, share your thoughts and insights in the comments below. The Titanic, much like the ship itself, is far from over.